and welcome to the WellnessPlus podcast. I'm your host, Corrina Rachel, and I'm joined today by Jessica Manson. She's a holistic practitioner and licensed acupuncturist, and she's here today to talk to us about how she went from being a skeptic of acupuncture to actually becoming a licensed acupuncturist. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about what actually brought you into the world of Oriental medicine?
Well, I was always a skeptic of anything that was alternative medicine, if you will. My family is a bunch of scientists, so for the longest time I kind of thought, well, if it's not double-blind randomized control trial proven, then it must be complete bunk. But I was ending up having a bunch of health problems when I was in my early 20s. And I'd gone, from Western doctor to Western doctor and wasn't really getting much results there. And by the time I was 21, I was on a bunch of different medications for side effects of medications and really wasn't able to function very well in any area of my life. And I had a friend who gave me a gift certificate for acupuncture on my birthday one year, and I didn't really want to go, but I figured, I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to be rude. I'll use a gift certificate because all I got to do is waste my time. And so I went, and the acupuncturist, asked me what all my problems were, and I was like, well, I got 1,000,001 problems, but these are kind of my main ones. And so she told me, like, okay, well, you should, I'm going to put these needles in, and you should notice a pretty good change within about 24 hours. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. This isn't going to work. And I told myself, well, I know that if anything happens, it's not placebo because I don't believe in it at all. So it can't be placebo if I think that nothing's going to happen.
Right.
So lo and behold, 6 hours later, I noticed a huge, huge shift in my health. And I was like, what is this? This must be magic. And so I kept on going back to this acupuncturist, and my health kept on improving. And she introduced me to a bunch of other practitioners who do things like herbal medicine and exercise therapy, massage, chiropractic, things like that. And it really got my life back on track. And to the point where I was able to start succeeding in school and in my relationships and my career. And I decided I really wanted to give that tremendous service that was given to me back to the community. And so that's why I went into Oriental medicine as a profession, because I want to give back that gift.
Wow. Can you elaborate a little bit more on which symptoms you noticed improving right after that acupuncture appointment?
Yeah. Well, the main problem that I was having is that I was bleeding a lot, just menstruating a lot, and no one could stop the bleeding. I was super anemic, and just because I was losing so much blood all the time, I'd be bleeding for a month or more without remission. Wow. And so she's like, yeah, the bleeding should just stop within 24 hours, and it did. That was the first time within 40 days. Wow. And so that really got my attention because I was on a bunch of different hormones and drugs trying to, keep my blood, and nothing was working. So that really helped. And as I continued seeing her, my digestion improved, my hair stopped falling out, my anxiety and depression tended to lift, my skin improved. It was really... I don't think there was a single aspect of my life that was not touched by the therapies that she performed. Even things as minor as allergies seemed to get better. And the interesting thing, too, is that when we look at the body from a holistic standpoint or even from an acupuncture standpoint, symptoms don't exist in isolation. So many biomedical doctors kind of, they look at certain symptoms being separate problems. The way more holistic medicine, especially Chinese medicine, looks at it is that everything's related. And so I might have one treatment for, menstruation problems, but that also affects my digestion. That also affects my skin. It's not like I'd have to have different treatments for each issue. It's all addressed in one kind of nice, neat package for the most part. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I like about what I do, too, is that I'm able to kind of put together these pieces of the puzzle and provide a treatment that really addresses the core issue very succinctly.
Right. So I definitely know what you mean about kind of this tendency to try and compartmentalize the body and then treat things in isolation, neglecting that idea of, what I guess even the word holistic medicine implies, which is that all these different parts of your body are working in coordination with one another. And so, like you said, as you start to address these certain symptoms, so to speak, by actually reaching in and trying to figure out what's causing those symptoms in the first place, suddenly you have this little domino effect of all of the other pieces.
That's right. And it's interesting because, even most of my patients notice a marked difference by the time they get up off the table and go home. And it's really rewarding to see the body's capacity to heal when you give it the correct incentive and information.
Yeah. Could you maybe talk about what are some of the common problems that you treat with acupuncture now, or some of the common things that come into your office?
I'd say about 80% of my patients have some kind of pain syndrome, which granted that can vary in terms of musculoskeletal pain or, digestive pain or menstrual pain, but mostly what gets people into my office is some sort of pain syndrome. That's the reason why we're taking on the name Holistic Pain Solutions beginning in 2019, just because pretty much everybody who comes in has some sort of pain issue.
Right.
So, I also do see patients occasionally who have more internal medicine issues going on, digestive health, stress is a big one, although it tends to be people who come in, they're stressed, and that's causing a pain issue for them for the most part. So I see a lot of those as well.
Right. You kind of end up in that which came first, the chicken or the egg scenario.
That's right.
And interestingly, just to kind of comment on our human nature, so we often kind of wait until things become too much to bear before we'll actually go and do something else. So to kind of maybe peel back the layers, so to speak, are there common underlying conditions or dysfunctions that maybe underlie a lot of the pain that you see?
Well, I hate to be so general because every person is different to one degree or another. I'd say, by and large, the main problem that I see, especially in the populations of pretty much any westernized nation, is that we're all overly stressed, meaning that our adrenal glands, which are special glands that control our fight or flight response, and they also control our inflammation, our sleep-wake, our immunity to a degree, that because of our stress, those end up becoming weakened. And I see that being usually step one in any kind of pathological degeneration in my patient population. So I'd say, even the healthiest people, just because of the society in which we live, our culture kind of wanting us to go all the time, the foods that we eat are largely modified, or they're high in sugar or high in starch, which is difficult for us to maintain an even level of blood sugar because of that. We have a lot of toxins that we're exposed to. So just by living in a westernized nation, it's almost impossible not to have an adrenal stress, and it's just kind of the people who end up manifesting better or worse are people who are able to control that stress better or worse, either through their habits and diet, which is kind of what I promote in my practice, people's changing in habits, changing in their dietary behavior, changes in exercise, things like that. Or some people end up just having a stronger or weaker adrenal than others, too. So we have to look at our innate constitution as well. So, but I think really everybody, it comes back to the adrenal glands, at least in part, simply because they control our ability to adapt to our environment and our surroundings and our circumstances. And so once we start losing our adaptive capacity is when things start breaking. So that's kind of, to be very general, it all comes back to that, in my opinion.
Very interesting. Can you maybe elaborate on some of those recommendations that you make a lot, or maybe even some of the changes that you made after learning more about Oriental medicine in terms of the You talked about lifestyle, exercise, how we handle stress.
Right. Well, it's a common misconception among people that practitioners of Oriental medicine only do acupuncture, especially because here in Texas, we're called licensed acupuncturists. So people think, oh, well, I'm going to an acupuncturist and that's all I'm going to get is like little needles stuck in me and then I'm going to leave. But acupuncture is actually one of very many elements that practitioners of Oriental medicine are trained to use. So we also counsel people on diet, lifestyle. We provide nutritional therapies through supplementation, herbal medicines, and we also coach people on meditative techniques. And and we do some manual therapies as well, like cupping and gua sha therapy, medical qigong. So there's a whole lot more to Oriental medicine than just acupuncture. Most of what I counsel my patients with in terms of self-care practices are how they can modify diet in order to control their blood sugar fluctuations. I find, well, it's not just me. we can look at adrenal stresses, and the number one stress on adrenal glands is what's called dysglycemia, or fluctuations in blood sugar levels. Our blood sugar level is largely determined by the type of foods that we eat. There's certain foods that metabolize into sugars much more quickly than others. And so if we eat a lot of those foods, we end up having huge spikes in our blood pressure, and then it drops really, or blood sugar, excuse me, and then the blood sugar drops very quickly. That makes a huge stress on the body, especially on the pancreas and on the adrenal glands in turn. So that's usually step one for most of my patients in terms of self-care, is to regulate their glycemic index through food. I do have a menu that I kind of wrote up that's just a sample, and it gives some guidelines. It's on my website under patient resources. So that's number one. Number two, I start counseling people on what I call exercise hygiene. So we also kind of in America, we think that, okay, well, unless I'm working out and really sweating and really, pushing it, then I'm either not working out or I'm not doing enough. So what I counsel people to do is to do an exercise hygiene program, which is a kind of moderate exertion, body weight, anaerobic program that takes you about 5 minutes to do the anaerobic exercise, and then you go for a walk for 30 minutes. That will cover your cardio for the day. And that's not going to make you into an Olympic athlete. It's not going to allow you to build a bunch of muscle. But what it does do is it allows you to exercise your body enough to where you're promoting and maintaining all your normal functions. And you're also not stressing your adrenal glands. So if you do that program every day, and then say if you like to run or play soccer or ride your bike or whatever, go do that and have fun, then that's about the amount of exercise that your body really needs. Many people who go and kind of get into these extreme exercise programs find that they end up gaining weight, or they're losing their hair, or they develop a lot of dysfunctions because that huge level of exercise is a big stress on their systems. And that's wonderful if you're trying to go to the Olympics or if you're a professional athlete. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just much harder for the body to adapt because it's being put under so much stress so often.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of the second portion is exercise, hygiene, and then if you want to do more, have fun. And if it stops being fun, that's your body telling you to stop. So third portion, which I think is probably really the most important part in terms of self-care, is meditation or some kind of mindfulness work. Amazingly, I've actually seen major differences on lab sheets of patients who meditate versus people who don't.
Wow.
So I had a group of about 4 women who came in. They were all about the same age with about the same level of problems, and we ran some lab work on them, mostly through hair analysis. And 3 out of the 4, when they came back for their retest and did their retest 3 months later, they looked about how I would expect, given their acupuncture and their supplement regimen and all of those things that they were doing. It's about what I would expect in 3 months. And the 4th one came back, and I didn't think it was the same person. And
Wow.
so I called the lab and I said, okay, I'm looking for a lab for a woman who's, completely depleted and she's in her early 60s, and this looks like you gave me somebody who's much younger and is not depleted at all. I mean, I wouldn't expect to see that kind of change within 18 months, much less 3.
Right.
And so when she came back in for a follow-up, I said, what are you doing? Because I gave you about the same regimen in terms of supplements and diet and treatments and as everybody else, and you responded so much better. And so what's your secret? And she says, oh, well, I meditate an hour a day. And
Wow.
I was like, whoa. I mean, to be able to actually, I knew that, like, in terms of her symptomatic picture, she was improving so much more quickly than her peers. And I saw that symptomatically, but to actually see that in terms of numbers on a lab sheet, it was like she took 10 years off of her age.
Wow.
And it was like her body was able to take the support that she got from the treatments, the herbs, the nutrients, and the other lifestyle changes that she made. It was like her body was just able to use it so much more efficiently. Wow. And so I tell people that, if you have to do one thing, meditate. Either do a meditation, or if you're religious, do prayer, yoga. Some people like to do Tai Chi, Qigong. But really, I think the most important portion of it is to be able to stop, check in with your body, see how it feels to be you right here, right now, and make that a point every day.
Right.
My favorite thing so far, at least, I just found this phone app called Insight Timer. And it's totally free, which is awesome. And it has tens of thousands of guided meditations on there. So you can just turn one on and you can listen to somebody who kind of walks you through a visualization meditation. Or if you wish to meditate in silence, you can say, I want to meditate for 2 minutes, and it'll play a nice little bell, at the beginning and the end. So it's been a really great resource for a lot of my patients. I've been using it myself. It's really done well for me too. So yeah, those are the main 3. I'd say those are the 3 pillars of health: how you eat, how you move, and how you think. And if my patients end up doing those self-care practices and are very rigorous about them, they tend not to have to see me that often. So, I'm always happy to see them and help kind of give them a tune-up when they need it. But I tell people, you're better off, doing your self-care and needing less input from me or from outside sources to keep you on track.
Right.
So
doing your own tune-up.
Yeah, doing your own tune-up, and and I think that doing things like acupuncture, cupping, laser therapy, those all really help when you're in an acute situation. But ideally, we should use those therapies in order to get us out of a problem situation, and then be able to maintain mostly on our own. Maybe get a tune-up about once a month, which I think is, that's kind of where I tell people maintenance, maybe treatment once a month. But but yeah, other than that, your body should be able to maintain most of the changes that we initiate in the treatment room on its own, provided that you're giving it the correct support on your own.
Right. That is so interesting that an hour of meditation per day was giving her such drastic results.
Unbelievable. And I've seen this routinely in my other patients that have meditated, and I even tried it in myself. I ended up having something kind of go wrong with me a couple months ago, and I was like, well, what am I doing, or what am I not doing that I'm telling my patients to do?
I ask myself that a lot.
Yeah, so I just had that little heart-to-heart with myself, and I'm like, am I being a good patient of myself?
Right.
And so I said, okay, well, I'm not meditating. So I changed it a little bit about my diet. I was cheating a little bit, but I was like, okay, no more small cheats, and then start meditating. And turned it around really, really fast. And, Western doctors didn't really believe that I could do that. And that's really all it was. It was adding the meditation and then just cleaning up just a tiny bit in my diet. And it just showed me too how much meditation can do.
Right.
And it's just been such a huge key for many of my patients, and even people who say they have too much pain to meditate or they don't know how. There's a lot of different things that you can do. So say like I have a lady who has some chronic back pain, and she says, well, it's hard for me to sit because of the pain. And I said, well, really what you need to do is not necessarily fight the pain or not think about the pain. Just say, okay, I have this pain, and that's okay, and I'm going to experience this pain, not necessarily, promote it or engage with it or say like, oh, it's going to ruin my life, but just say, this is where I'm at right now. I notice this, and I'm going to be okay with that. And even if that is a 30-second check-in, that can really change the perception. And so she started doing that, and she's like, wow, my back pain has really decreased since I started doing that, which, granted, we've done a lot in terms of therapies as well.
Right.
So, but I think that her ability to do that at home allowed her to maintain the results of the treatments that we did in the clinic.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of the biggest change that I see too, is that the people who meditate keep their results. The people who don't meditate or kind of dilly-dally around it a little bit, they don't tend to hold their results quite as long or quite as well.
Interesting.
So that's been a big one.
It's free.
It's totally free.
Meditation.
It's totally free. Yeah. And I've had some people tell me, they're like, wow, I just don't think I could sit still for that long. But it's not really about that. So I tell these people, you can do something called the 5-second meditation. So the 5-second meditation was actually developed by a gentleman I know who was having some really, was grinding his teeth so bad at night that the dentist gave him mouth guards, and he would go and smash the mouth guards and swallow the pieces at night because he was grinding his teeth so bad.
Oh, my.
And so the dentist told him, well, we're going to need to do all this surgery and this and that and realign your jaw and realign your bite and, and he's thinking to himself, like, I do not want to go through and have my jaw wired shut for 6 months and, have to go through all this. So what he decided to do, he realized that he was grinding his teeth, mostly because he was under a lot of stress at the time. And he's like, well, I'm going to train myself to relax, which that's really what meditation is. It's training your body to relax on command. And so he went and got a bunch of sticker dots like you put on file folders.
Right.
And so he got these sticker dots and he put them all around his house and his car and his office and just anywhere that he knew he'd be, and he'd see one, kind of maybe every 5 minutes or so. And so his task to himself was to, every time he saw one of the sticker dots, make sure his jaw was relaxed, take a deep breath, shoulders relaxed, and then move on. And so that's your 5-second meditation. So people say, oh, well, I don't have an hour to meditate. You don't have to have an hour. You can do it for 5 seconds. You can do anything for 5 seconds.
Right.
And the thing is that if you do that enough times over the course of the day, so like this guy had his dots everywhere. So he was training himself to relax, probably 50 times a day, maybe more. He eventually got to the point where he no longer grinds his teeth.
Wow.
Doesn't need a mouth guard, didn't need surgery, completely solved his own problem through 5 seconds of meditation incrementally throughout the day.
Wow.
So yeah, I have a lot of patients who are like, oh, well, I just couldn't, you can take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, relax, and just make sure you do that on cue. And you can get the same benefit out of doing something like that as you can out of sitting by yourself for an hour like my other patient does.
Right.
So there's a lot of different ways that you can add meditation in your life that can work better for you.
Right.
There are people who I just don't think would do well sitting by themselves for an hour. That's just too difficult. So, so yeah, it's all about kind of finding what works for you.
Right. Yeah, rather than fixating on I can't do these things or I can't see myself, sitting still for an hour doing whatever. getting out of that mindset of I can't do this or that's not for me or whatever, and just going, all right, well, how am I going to morph this into something that does work for me?
That's right.
Find a way to make this, something that fits in my lifestyle, fits in my time, and doesn't create more stress. So there's two little pieces that I'm thinking, just hearing you talk here. The first one was that, we hear a lot about how much the body needs sleep. To the extent that if we are sleep deprived, the brain will actually kind of trigger you into that state of sleep even while you're awake. Yes. And so you have like the sleep deprivation kind of hallucinations that people experience. Just as a kind of proof, so to speak, that our body really, really needs this sleep. So in a way, seeing that hour of meditation as kind of slowing down enough that you're not necessarily in the state of sleep, but your body's able to go into that state of healing.
That's right.
That is really, kind of what the body wants that sleep for.
That's right.
Hey, we're going to kind of give your brain a break from all of these other tasks that you're always thinking of during the day and just kind of let it play catch up on the little repair and whatever little digestion, all of those things that take a lot of energy, that if our energy is being dispersed through a million different activities, some of those things can just get sluggish or slow down.
Yeah, that's basically exactly what it does. I mean, just kind of going back to our earlier discussion about the adrenal glands and how your adrenal glands control your adaptive capacity and how they get stressed when you're stressed, either through environmental stresses, through emotional stresses, through food stresses. What meditation does is it takes that stress off of those adrenal glands, even if it is for just a moment, and it allows those adrenal glands to heal. So that allows you to improve your own capacity to adapt to your world. It gives you that pause to not only heal what's wrong, but to increase your own capacity to heal.
Right.
Yeah. That's why it's so vitally important. I think that's why people who meditate, they get better so much faster. It's really night and day. And again, I guess going back to different types of meditation too, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, I mean, there can be moving meditations as well. So if you focus on very controlled movements and, breathing through certain forms, that can also be just as healing. So for people who don't want to sit still, you don't necessarily have to.
Right, right. And then, taking on the other side of that, kind of the 5-second meditation piece, I'm probably just making up a word here, but it's almost like a sympathetic override.
It is.
Almost.
Exactly, yes. It's a sympathetic override.
Your body's having that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system response.
Yes.
Kind of as a product of what you were saying. Like our culture's telling us to go, go, go. Our culture's telling us that you can get by on less sleep. All these things. So then by just seeing that little, I like the idea of the little dots or little reminders.
Or stickers or whatever you like.
Whatever.
Post-it note, yeah.
Little reminders that you just go, oh, sympathetic override. Take a second, take that slow, deep breath that kind of tells your nervous system, hey, there's no bears around here. There's no wolves. There's nothing that you need to run from.
That's right.
And kind of help shift you back into that more calm state where you're thinking more clearly and all of those other functions of your body suddenly can be tended to because your brain isn't perceiving that you're in this, really kind of scary situation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, the way I look at the way we look at pathologies and healing is that, when you develop a certain pathological change, whether that's pain or whether that's another type of disease, whether you have poor immunity, whatever, that's because your body is trying to do the best it can with either limited resources because you're not giving it enough good resources or because you're pushing in a certain direction and it can't fully accomplish what you're trying to get it to accomplish, and so it kind of lets a couple of things go in order to, put it more energy, somewhere else. And the way I look at healing is that your body has learned how to exist in a certain way over time, in a pathological way. What we do, not only in the clinic room, but what you can do on your own, is help train your body, retrain it to live in a state of health. And so the way we retrain our bodies is similar to a way that we would, say, train a dog. So if I have a dog and I want to teach him to sit in the corner and wait for me, if I just go tell him one time, go sit in the corner and wait for me, he's not going to understand that. And so I have to continually tell him, if he starts to get up or if he starts to make a certain move that's not what I want, I have to provide little corrections over a longer period of time in order for that dog to understand that that's what I want, that sit means sit. Your body is very much the same. So that's why we have to often, do a couple of different acupuncture treatments over a certain period of time. Or you have to, keep a consistent exercise program, keep a consistent diet, keep a consistent meditation practice. Because what that does is it provides that same input to your body that says, hey, I know you were living that way before, but we're going to live in a different way right now.
I like that.
And so really, that's kind of what I look at. What I do is I retrain your body to exist in a different way through some physical and manual inputs. And then I train you on how to take care of that and how to continue to train your body so that it can maintain those changes that we initiated with needles or with laser or with cupping or gua sha. So yeah, that's kind of the way we can look at the 5-second meditation, or look at everything that you put in your mouth, look at every type of physical activity that you do. Anything that you do in your life, you're training your body to live and behave and exist in a certain way. And so when we look at our lives and our behavior that way, it starts making sense about how we can change the way our bodies exist, how we can make a shift back to health by changing even very small habits on a consistent basis.
Right.
So it's not about making a huge change. It's about making little changes over a long period of time. Yeah.
And that feels so much easier to do as well. And that's been one of my big, something that I use for myself, but then also something that I recommend as a health coach. Always kind of focusing on those little small changes, because it feels really overwhelming to try and, okay, well, now you need to start meditating for 1 hour every single day.
Yeah.
Well, that feels scary. It feels difficult, but something like 5-second meditations.
Yeah, 5-second meditation.
Maybe once a day, every morning when you wake up or when you go to bed.
Right.
Or you start kind of linking those to different actions, like, on your way home from work, or every time you're in traffic.
Yep.
Every time that you are in a confrontational relationship at work or something like that, and you start feeling that stress response come up. Maybe that's your signal that you do that little. Yeah. And it was almost like a 3-second meditation.
Yeah, you do your 3-second meditation.
You just relax your jaw, relax your shoulders, maybe take a deep breath.
That's right.
And kind of, like you said, you're kind of just
It's just a retraining.
Yeah, retraining.
It's a very small nudge.
Right. Reinforcing.
Yes,
that was the word I was looking for. Reinforcing those little kind of trainings. Can you talk a little bit, kind of moving, back into, Oriental medicine and I guess maybe just some of the tenets?
You can't go and either give or demand the world to anyone at one point, because then they're just overwhelmed and set up for failure.
Right.
Just like, I ride horses, and so to me everything comes back to horses, and I train horses for fun. That's what I do. And so, like if I go and I take a horse who's like had 90 days under saddle and then tell him to go jump a 4-foot jump, he's going to be like, I don't think so. And so, people are very much the same way. You can't go and kind of throw someone into it, eventually that's the goal. But really, I think for pretty much everybody, you've got to find where your starting point is and then chip away maybe 5 to 10% a week at most. Because otherwise, it's just too much at once. For me, even in my own story, it took me, probably 10 years to fully get on track with what I do now. Not only in terms of learning, but in terms of implementing.
Yeah.
Because we all have some resistance, we all want to have a Snickers bar every now and then, or, go and have one too many glasses of wine, or stay up too late, or, just skip our mindfulness that day because, we got other things to do. But yeah, I mean, it's not about being perfect. And so many of my patients are like, well, I can't do all that right now. You don't have to. Just aim to be this much better than you were yesterday. And if you screw up, that's okay. Just get back on the horse and do it again tomorrow. And, I find so many people, they'll come in and they're like, oh, well, I failed because I had a brownie at my son's birthday party and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, that's okay. Your body should be able to handle, a little bit of errant food or errant exercise, or, not meditating, forgetting one day. You should have the capacity to deal with that, and that's okay.
Right.
And you can't just go from 0 to 60 immediately. Just sort of like you got a car and if you just start from a complete standstill with your car and then just floor it, what's going to happen? Your tires are going to squeal before you end up taking off. And so you end up losing time that way.
Right. And burning up all your
burning
fuel.
up your rubber, burning up your fuel, and I mean, patients are the same way. So you gotta start a little bit slower before you move faster, and that's really, I think it's a better way to do it because it sets you up for success.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, the kind of philosophy of Chinese medicine and maybe, I guess, the little pieces, so to speak, that that you use, tools that you use with your clients?
Well, that's kind of, I can't really answer that question in a super succinct way because I do use a lot of different techniques with all of my clients. Even in terms of acupuncture, I use traditional Chinese medicine, neoclassical pulse diagnosis, dry needling, trigger point release. I use electrical stimulation. I use 5-element acupuncture. I use moxibustion. I use Japanese style. I use a Korean style. I even use American style acupuncture, ear acupuncture. So I'm, I vary my technique and my perspective based on my client's presentation. And there's some clients who fit better with certain viewpoints than others. And I've made a point to educate myself and educate my staff acupuncturist to be able to adapt among all those different viewpoints and be able to make the best selection for each patient. That being said, I would say that the common denominators among all of them are that the body is really interrelated, and you can't provide a single stimulus to the body, whether it's through a needle or whether it's through a touch or through a suction cup or through speaking to a person. There's no stimulus that can go and create an isolated effect. So say even if I look at probably the most non-integrated technique I use, which would be a dry needling trigger point release acupuncture. Say you've got a tight muscle in your trapezius in your back or whatever. I can go and release that muscle. But at the same time, when I'm releasing that muscle, not only does that help relax your shoulder and your neck and your back, but it also provides an input in terms of the chi flow in your body. So it helps your chi, which, if we want to put that in a Western kind of viewpoint frame, would be more your electromagnetism. Is like how I like to think about it in terms of a scientific or Western standpoint. It shifts that. It shifts your field.
Right.
And so I can use that not only as a muscle release, as a physiological acupuncture point, but I also can use this to help drive your chi downwards. So that can help relieve headaches. That can help relieve anger in a way. And so yeah, there's really no one thing that can be addressed in isolation. That being said, I try and adapt the techniques that I use very specifically to the patient who's in front of me.
Right. Very interesting. Can you expand a little bit on talking about the qi and maybe how the different acupuncture techniques or Chinese medicine techniques are able to help facilitate that movement of the qi?
Well, I guess I'll kind of explain to you how I like to treat most patients and why I like to sequence my treatments in certain ways. And that kind of comes back to qi, and it comes back to a bunch of different tissue layers. So for most patients, what I like to do first is to start with a physiological-based dry needling. That can tell me, especially since most of my patients are pain syndrome type patients, if there's a tight muscle or tendon that's really being a big actor in their problem. So this allows me to look at the muscle layer. I then like to do manual therapies after we release all those tight muscles. I like to do manual therapies like cupping or gua sha, which involve cupping is a suction cup on the skin. Gua sha is a scraping technique where you put a lot of oil on the skin so the skin itself is not damaged, but you drag a blunt edged object over that oiled skin so it releases some of the fascia that surrounds muscles. So a lot of times when we believe that we have tight muscles, we actually have tight fascia, which is the connective tissue that surrounds your muscles. So through cupping and gua sha, I can release the fascia. I draw blood and healing mediators into that area. It also releases endorphins and allows the body to really relax. And it also can provide a diagnostic for me as a practitioner, because as many people have seen, like with the Olympics, cupping can leave marks or gua sha can leave marks. The color of those marks and the location of those marks, how they're presenting, can show me not only what's wrong with the body, but which meridians are affected. So I use that usually as my second layer, so it's therapeutic as well as diagnostic. I then will do some traditional Chinese acupuncture, and I vary my technique depending on the patient, but the patient will retain some needles for about 15 minutes, and what that does is that goes and realigns their electromagnetic field or their qi. So what we're doing with each needle is that we're finding areas of blocked qi, and then we use the needle to either open or close a gate to remove that blockage and reestablish balanced, even qi flow throughout the body. The way I like to look at that is that it increases your body's ability to maintain the results of the treatment, and it also can address a lot of issues, especially like psycho-emotional issues or issues that are caused by people being in an overly what we call sympathetic state or fight or flight state. It takes the body out of that fight or flight and allows it to kind of put all of its energy into healing in that regard. And then usually to finish up the treatment, if patients still have pain by the time they're up off the table, which many of them don't, but some of them do, we can do a protocol in the ear, which actually changes how the brain processes pain signals. Wow. So any type of ear acupuncture works directly on brain function. How that works, I don't know. I wish I could say, but anyway, so we change the way the brain processes pain signals, and that usually brings that pain level way down. Occasionally, I'll also add laser therapy to a treatment, say where there's tissue degeneration. And what the laser does is it uses a very special light wave that increases cell metabolism, and that allows cells to repair themselves and divide more quickly. So if there's any kind of injury or repetitive chronic damage to a tissue, the laser can really speed up healing and repair in that local area. So that's kind of how I structure my treatment. So we look at the body not only from a physiological, anatomical standpoint, but we also look at the body from a qi-based standpoint and balance your electromagnetic field, change the way your brain processes certain signaling patterns. So the way each patient needs their qi moved is totally specific to the patient. So we can use, I use a lot of diagnostic techniques from traditional Chinese medicine called yin-yang theory or Zongfu diagnosis, neoclassical pulse diagnosis, tongue diagnosis. All of those are utilized in my practice to find the specific acupoints that are best for each patient. I do a lot of pulse diagnosis, which I really love because the shape of the pulse, the intensity, the waveform can all guide me to specific acupuncture points that patient's body wants, and then the pulse will immediately change and will become more or less level, and it will show me that I got my mark. So I really enjoy using that technique and use it a lot because it not only confirms my suspicions in terms of what I know academically, but I do know that I'm absolutely hitting the mark because the patient's body's telling me that I am.
Wow. You kind of get that like immediate
Yeah,
feedback.
you get immediate feedback. And it's also much, it can't be confounded by any kind of story or emotion. And I know, and there might be some things that the pulse tells me that like the patient didn't tell me. And so I can still address those issues, even if the patient is not necessarily wanting to disclose what their entire issues are. And I've not to say that I'll psychically know what they are from the pulse, but I can kind of work through whatever blockages might be there, and still allow that patient to heal their entire body, their entire issue set.
Right.
So,
or maybe they didn't even realize that this certain thing actually was a symptom of dysfunction, or people who have had a certain symptom or certain thing for so long that they just think, oh well, I just have a bad back, or I just have headaches or whatever, and they don't maybe even see it as something that's worth mentioning to a practitioner because they just didn't think there was anything that could be done.
Or like, people might develop something like, I see this very commonly. People will have a disease develop around some kind of like big event in their lives. And they may or may not be able to connect the event with the onset of the problem. But what we can do with acupuncture is actually go back and I guess realign the body to where it's not holding on to the trauma that it perceived from that event that really incited that pathological change.
Right.
So there's a lot of trauma resolution that goes on with especially a traditional Chinese medicine standpoint.
Right. Can you talk a little bit more about the meridians?
Sure. We have many different layers of meridians. We have 12 main meridians. We also have musculocutaneous meridians and tendinomuscular meridians, divergent channels, and extraordinary meridians. These are all kind of layered in different ways. So your cutaneous meridians mostly control your skin, the tendinomuscular mostly your kind of superficial tendons. The regular meridians are the most commonly used, and they control, I'd say, most of your normal functioning. However, mostly what I treat in my practice are the two deepest levels of meridians, which are divergent channels and the extraordinary channels. So basically, the way we can look at these is the divergent channels control any kind of chronic and recurrent problems. So if people have a meridian that's chronically and recurrently activated from some long-standing problem, the best way to access that is through the divergent channel rather than through the regular meridian. Similarly, I use the extraordinary meridians a lot, mostly because as long as I balance those, everything else can be balanced. So the way we look at the extraordinary meridians is that they are reservoirs of our qi. So if we have too little qi in the regular meridians or somewhere else, we'll pull on the extras in order to get the qi and mobilize it where it needs to go. Or if we've got like a pathology or a virus or whatever, we'll go and we'll shove it into those extraordinary meridians so it doesn't cause problems. Or even if we have too much qi, we'll go and shove it into the extra meridians so it doesn't cause problems. Most people end up favoring one of the 8 extra meridians, just for one reason or another. What I do with most of my treatments is I will end the treatment by balancing the 8 extra meridians to where you're equally pushing into and pulling on all 8 of them rather than favoring just one. I find that when I do that, I have fewer adverse effects after my treatments, and I also have people who hold the effects of their treatments much longer, which is why, with rare exception, I will always address an extra meridian whenever I see a patient for acupuncture.
Wow. And then you do that primarily with needles, or again, that's going to be a
mostly
different...
with needles. However, for people who are needle shy or for people who are very depleted, I may use moxibustion, which is the burning of the fuzz of the mugwort leaf. What that does is it causes a far infrared wave that can warm the body on a much deeper level than other substances can. I don't know exactly what wavelengths are used in moxa. There's not been a whole lot of research about it, unfortunately. But yeah, that can help bring chi into the meridian if a meridian is very deficient. So especially in the winter, I find I use a lot more moxa. People tend to get cold and get to where chi's not moving well. The chi is a bit more depleted in the winter than it is in the summer generally. So yeah, most of the time with needles, but occasionally with moxa.
Right.
Yeah, or for children who are really needle averse, we can even use acupressure.
Interesting. And then could you, and maybe this is not even a good question, but could you speak to, the things that we do in our lifestyles that are negatively affecting our chi?
Well, again, this kind of goes back to the first portion of our conversation. Health, again, according to the Chinese, it's how you think, how you move, and how you eat. And so if we're eating stuff that's highly processed, that has a lot of sugar content in it, that has a lot of starch content in it, what that does, if we look at it from a Chinese nutrition standpoint, is it causes what's called dampness in our channels. So according to Zong Fu theory, there are 6 different pathogens or 6 evils. Those are wind, heat, dampness, dryness, summer heat, and cold. And so those are the 6 things that can really damage us. Usually what will happen is that those will start damaging us either via environmental exposure or from the foods that we eat. So there's certain foods, so just if we look at foods as herbal medicines, which this is something that I also tell my patients, everything you put in your mouth is either medicine or poison. There is no in between.
Right.
And, so that banana that you eat has an effect on you that can be medicinal or it can be poisonous depending on your state of health. So bananas, for example, they tend to be very cold. So for someone who's got, or at least the Chinese would call them cold, that means that somebody who has a cold type pathology, so we'll say loose stools is usually generally a cold problem. Bananas might be contributing to that problem. And that person would be very well advised to be eating more ginger, which is hot. It's going to warm them up and help firm up their stools.
Interesting.
So yeah, what we eat can certainly contribute to our well-being or lack thereof. In a very general sense, foods that create dampness tend to be the worst because dampness, as far as resolving it with herbs or with Chinese medicine, tends to be the hardest to kind of get rid of. The Chinese will say that dampness, it causes things to be sticky, to be cloying, and it's just very hard to get rid of. So, when we look at dampness creating foods, it's more things like milk, grains, alcohol. Those are really the big ones, which I think some people can tolerate milk better than others, so I'm not totally anti-milk, but grains, processed foods, alcohol, sweets, those are big ones, which if we look at this from a Western standpoint, these are all foods that are relatively high glycemic. And so what are we doing? We're creating pancreatic stress. and in turn creating adrenal stress. So yeah, that's kind of how our lifestyle can affect what we're doing. And I'm sorry, I kind of forgot the
it's
original
okay. It's
question.
really interesting. I was just curious, when we talk about a need to move the chi from one area to another and things like that, so that people can understand, well, what are they doing in their life that's maybe creating these problems that necessitate some kind of manual tool coming in to help move the chi?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a bit of a complex question. I think that, if you're feeling like you're not functioning well, come in.
Right.
If it has gotten to the point where, you're saying, man, I used to be able to play catch with my kid and my shoulder's hurting and whatever, a lot of times overuse can cause chi blockage. So we'll say that, if we want to look at it from a traditional Chinese medicine standpoint, it causes chi and blood stagnation, which is like an overuse type injury. So that and if you say implement the tools that we talked about, basically getting on a low glycemic diet, making sure you maintain an exercise hygiene program, making sure you do mindfulness activity every day. If those three things by themselves don't solve the problem, then you probably need something like acupuncture, cupping, laser therapy, herbal and nutritional therapy. Speaking of nutritional therapy, I think that probably everyone can benefit from certain nutrients being added to their diet. If we look at the human species as kind of what our natural diet would be, we're not getting a lot of the nutrients that we would as cavemen, in our diet. So, say like if we eat a plant, right now we only eat the tastiest parts. We don't eat the whole plant. Or if we eat an animal, we're only eating the tasty, meat, muscle tissue, rather than eating all the organ meats like we probably would if we were, hunting that animal and having to survive on our own.
Right.
So we have a certain amount of nutritional deficiency in our diet, not to mention that really the nutrient content of even good foods like spinach or kale or whatever, our soil depletion is making the nutrient content per serving go way lower than it's ever been. So I read something the other day talking about if you ate a bowl of spinach in 1942, you would have to eat 40 bowls of spinach today in order to have the same nutrient equivalent, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
So we have some pretty major nutritional deficiencies in our diet just due to our world circumstances, and also due to the fact that we probably don't want to have a spleen burger for lunch, So for the most part, what I do to fill those gaps is I recommend whole food nutritional supplements, which are basically desiccated plants and desiccated organ meats that are put into tablet form. And that way you're getting food that's like it's not lab-created vitamins, it's actual food. But you don't have to go and, eat like pork brain, for dinner to get the benefit of it. So it allows you to get the same nutritional profile that your body is adapted to receive without having to go and, have some unsightly dietary choices. So, that being said, I recommend a select portion of those to all my patients just to maintain a well-rounded nutritional base. And I also recommend either bone broth or desiccated collagen for everybody. Basically what that does is it allows you to have building blocks to recreate connective tissue very easily. So when I say connective tissue, this is your skin, hair, nails, tendons, joint linings, lining of your GI tract, a lot of your brain matter is all connective tissue. So by having a bone broth or a collagen source every day, you're allowing your body to receive building blocks to create that connective tissue in the exact same ratio that it needs to be super efficient. So say like if I need to go and create collagen, I need I get A from spinach and B from broccoli and C from eggs. And I get maybe, 3 units of A and 10 units of B and 5 units of C. Well, even though I got 10 units of B, I should be able to make 10 units of collagen. I can only make 3 units because A is my limiting factor, right? If I end up eating collagen from another animal source, or bone broth, which is basically homemade collagen, then I get 10 units, 10 units, 10 units, and so I can be very efficient and make 10 units of collagen. So collagen not only keeps you young, keeps everything moving right, keeps your digestion really good. It also is a super easily digestible protein source, which I find absorption is a difficult challenge for a lot of patients. They're not able to absorb a lot of nutrients, and if that's the case, I can give you every nutrient under the sun, but if you can't use it, then, what are you doing? So collagen allows you to have much better absorption, and it also gives you all 22 amino acids, which, unless you're eating organ meats on the regular, you're not getting in. Amino acids are building blocks of proteins, and so unless we have all 22, we're not able to build all the proteins that we need on a daily basis. So that's why I tell people, if you're on one thing, do collagen. And then I have a couple of other things that I like to fill in as far as nutritional gaps, just for general health. And then if you need to do something or condition specific, let me put it that way, we can do some nutrients or herbs specific for the condition. Overall, again, going back to baby steps, I don't like to put people on a million things at once, because I find that it's too hard on their budget, and then they end up having them sit on their shelf and not using them, and if that's the case, they're not going to get any better. So all of my patients are on no more than 5 nutrients or herbs at a time, and that way it can address their condition without being overwhelming, and they're able to tell what's working. I know a lot of practitioners who will go and give a whole lot of different nutrients. And while you can see results faster that way, I just find that for most people, it's just a bit too much to go for out of the gate. Yeah.
So, a lot of discussion on, you've been recommending like the organ meats and collagen if you're not interested in actually eating organ meats. How do you feel about, vegetarian or vegan diets? Do you feel that there's maybe a need for them to be supplementing collagen since they're not?
I think, if you're a vegan, that's great, but just be a bad vegan. So really, like, if we look at humans as a species, we're designed to be omnivorous. So we are designed to get about 80% of our diet from plant matter, which is why we have grinders and molars for our back teeth. However, we are designed to have some of our nutrients sourced from animal sources, which is why we have ripping and tearing front teeth like a carnivore. If we look at, if we were a caveman, what we'd be doing as far as food, it's a whole lot easier to kind of find plants and munch off of those. So we're going to be having more plant matter. However, if we have a season where plants become scarce, if it's too cold or if it's too hot or whatever, we're going to end up turning to animal sources. And so we'd be getting about 20% of our nutrients from animal sources. So I think that, if we eat mostly plants, that's ideal. I'd like to see someone getting around 80% of their nutrient from plants. But if there is no animal nutrient, we cannot, by definition, get certain types of nutrients into our body. So say like vitamin B4 in particular can pretty much only be found in liver sources. Very difficult to find in plant sources. Same thing with long-chain amino acids are not able to be found in, and long-chain fatty acids, are not able to be found in plant sources. They can only be found in animal sources. Many people go and they come to me and they say, well, my body is able to put together, medium-chain fatty acids into long-chain fatty acids, and so it's okay to do flax oil rather than fish oil. Technically, yes, but the thing is that takes your body a whole lot of energy to do. And it's not like it just is something that you can just, put it together and, it works. It's something that takes a lot of metabolic stress for your body to undergo, and it's also a very inefficient process. Basically, that's using your body's emergency system in order to survive. And while, yes, you can survive, it makes it very difficult to initiate any kind of healing response. So I tell my vegan people, I mean, I get it. I love animals. I understand having that as a lifestyle choice. However, as a provider, I have to be completely honest that having a 100% vegan diet is not conducive to healing. And I find that the people that I see who get the poorest results or don't get results typically are vegans.
Interesting.
And I think it's great to have mostly plant matter. I mean, to be fair, my vegans who do, a couple tablespoons of collagen every day tend to do well.
Okay.
So if you can be a vegan who cheats, that's fine. You don't have to go eat a steak. You don't have to go, get some fried chicken somewhere.
Liver.
Yeah, that's right. But if you do, even like, say, the desiccated nutrients that I have at the office, most of them have animal proteins in them. And even if you use that and a couple of tablespoons of collagen, that's usually enough. I don't think that there's anything wrong with really limiting your animal protein. But we do need a certain amount of it to heal. We do need long-chain fatty acids in order to promote nerve function and brain function. Like I said, we can synthesize a certain amount of it, but it's sort of like relying on your emergency brake to stop your car at every stoplight. It's probably not the best idea. Can you get it done? Yeah, but you're gonna wear out your car real fast. You're gonna wear out that brake real fast.
It's not as sustainable.
It's not sustainable. And I think, like, say there are some times, like, if someone's really looking to recondition their digestive system, which I have a lot of patients want to do, or go and take a stress off of their liver for a certain amount of time to increase their liver function. Being vegan for short periods of time, cool. Do it for a month. But I wouldn't recommend over long periods of time. It's just it's not sustainable to get in really therapeutic amounts of nutrients. The body really has a very limited capacity to heal. I have one gentleman who came in to see me for back pain, and he had an issue that I'd had similar people come in for, and they usually got a result within about 2 weeks, maybe 3, and usually felt pretty good. Throughout many months of physical therapy and different exercises, things like that, even with laser therapy, it took him about 18 months to get marked progress, and I feel like he's very likely to relapse, and a lot of that is that he's inefficient at making his connective tissue, which goes back to collagen, because he's not eating any kind of animal proteins. And so that's just kind of how it is, and and if that's what people really want, take a longer time to heal and maintain their lifestyle choices, nothing wrong with it, but that's just how the body, it can't adapt very well.
Right. So fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come in today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm definitely looking forward to having you back on the program again.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any closing thoughts for our listeners about, maybe why they should consider visiting a practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine?
Well, I think that the main benefit is that you can visit someone who has a lot of expertise in how different symptoms and different parts of the body relate to each other. And if you're really looking for a truly holistic, integrative approach, I think a licensed acupuncturist is an excellent choice. Again, our therapies, since they are all all natural, if you will. We don't have any kind of adverse effects like drug therapies would, and it's very low risk compared to a lot of other procedures. Acupuncture tends to be very forgiving. I have to say the worst that has happened is nothing. Same thing with nutrients. They tend to be pretty forgiving, even if you don't necessarily need them. Really the worst thing that's going to happen is nothing. Just like if you ate a certain food. They're very low risk compared to a lot of other methods of pathology management. And I think they can be a lot more effective because you can get a lot more. You can get results in many different areas with one line of therapy.
Wonderful. Jessica, thank you so much for being here, and look forward to having you again soon.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to the podcast today. If you'd like to learn more about Jessica Manson, you can visit holisticpainsolutions.com. That is hyphenated between each word. And if you'd like to check out the full video version of this interview, along with hundreds of other health and wellness videos, head over to WellnessPlus.tv to start your free 2-week trial. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much for listening, and come back and join us again soon.
We're the only country in the world that separates the mind from the body. Yeah. The only country.
I'm joined today by Athena Jezik, Ed Norden, Robert Gardner, Dr. Paula Bruno.
The body has a natural ability and tendency to want to heal.
It doesn't have to be complicated or costly.
I can talk science. Yeah, we'll talk science for sure.
You do often need to supplement with magnesium. Unbalanced light.
Vitally important to make sure that the entire system is opened up.
Actually, happiness and suffering are states of mind. They're not external things.
Do you have any recommendations for our listeners?
Use a tennis ball.
Vinyasa or hatha yoga.
Try a HIIT workout. You only got to do 20 minutes.
Every day, having a practice for yourself.
We're not powerless, to improve our situation.
Welcome to the WellnessPlus podcast.
Introducing Yoga Plus, offering a free series every month with over 300 different videos. Take control of your health. Work out anytime, anywhere. Yoga Plus. Download now for free.